Hey, my name is Haley Miller, and today we're going to discuss 3 techniques to help ensure student and teacher success. These are techniques from the book Teach Like a Champion by Dave Lemov. So, the first thing we're going to talk about is standardizing the format. So, this just consists of making sure that your formats or the worksheets, the notes, things that students are doing their work on are all of the same. It makes it easier for you to walk around and gather information, and it makes it a real quick process. So you're able to walk up and down the rows in your classroom, look over students' shoulders, and see exactly where they are because you know exactly where that work is supposed to be, where their answers will be, and which problems they're working on. It expedites the process of ensuring students are understanding. It's really easy for you to walk around and look over their shoulder and see if they are making a mistake, or if there's anything you need to help them correct because you're able to see exactly what they're struggling with and exactly where it is on that page. Standardizing the format is one of the most powerful tools for streamlining data gathering and making our observations more efficient. This impacted my thinking because it really emphasized the importance of gathering data really quickly and being able to do that efficiently. Um, it's hard to walk up and down and look over students' shoulders and try to check their work without knowing exactly what to look for or where you're looking. If they are just working on notebook paper, they have a tendency to have lots of scribbles, lots of pictures, lots of notes that aren't really beneficial for you to have. So it's good for you to be able to look exactly at what you need and be able to use that information really quickly. We can then take that information and use it to redirect or change our lesson if we notice students are struggling with something, or if we see a trend that we need to back up and maybe reteach a certain lesson before moving on. It makes our walking up and down the aisles and our checking to make sure students are on track, make sure they're doing the work they should be doing. It makes it really efficient and it gives us a purpose for that. So we're able to look specifically at that one thing and know for sure if they're getting that done and if they're doing it right. And then, like I said earlier, students have a tendency to scribble, to doodle, to write lots of extra stuff that we don't necessarily need. And it keeps us from wasting our time looking through all sorts of other work that they may have done, or scribbles or pictures. And it shows us just exactly what we need to be looking at, and it gives us the information we need right away. The way that I plan on implementing this in my classroom is to have my students all write notes in the same way, whether it's teaching them Cornell notes or giving them a form that they are to fill out as we go, so that I know they're writing notes on the right things and where those notes are located. Also, making booklets of questions, assignments, definitions, things that they need to do, and having that all already outlined in a booklet of paper, homework, assignments, so that I'm not just looking through a bunch of notebook paper. I'm able to get the information that I need quickly, and I know exactly where to look for that. I'll be able to use those forms really well to check for student understanding, see if there are common mistakes, be able to flip through really easily. Since I already know exactly what to look for and what each student will be doing and where it's located, I can actually make my time more efficient because I know how I'm checking their work. And I can also use the data that I gather to adjust my lesson if needed. So I just felt like this was something that's really valuable in our classrooms. It's important to be able to gauge understanding of our students to see where they are and how they're doing and do that really quickly. It will take some additional time in the beginning to actually get those forms and the homework and the booklets and all of that to start handing out, but once you get past that phase, you'll make that time back at least that same amount of time, if not way more, because you're able to really quickly check work rather than spending a lot of time looking through stuff you don't need. It can also make our jobs a lot easier as educators because it allows us to walk around our classrooms and see what our students are doing and I know I've been guilty in the past of just walking around and looking over shoulders to make sure they were actually writing something or that they were actually doing work, but it wasn't very targeted. I wasn't looking for specific work, for specific questions, specific notes, and this allows me to do that and know exactly what I'm looking for and use that information. And then it keeps the students and the teachers on the same page. We're able to say, turn to page 3 in your work or in your homework definitions. We know exactly what they're looking at. They know exactly what we're looking at. And it allows us to all follow along, to be on the same page, to work at the same rate because we know exactly what they are looking at. The second technique is affirmative checking. So this is basically just creating checkpoints within lessons or assignments and making sure that those students have correct information and are doing things correctly before you allow them to move on. So it's inserting specific points into your lesson when students must get confirmation that their work is correct, productive, or sufficiently rigorous before they're allowed to move on to the next section. It should be something that happens really quickly. We should do maybe 1 or 2 questions and then have those checked. Maybe writing a definition, maybe describing a concept, and checking that one thing before we allow them to move on. This keeps us from reinforcing maybe information that isn't all the way correct, or having them practice things that they're going to have to later go back and redo because they weren't doing it right. And it allows us to really check and make sure they know what they're doing. So if we give them, say, one math problem and have that math problem checked before they're allowed to move to the next problem, it makes us aware of what mistakes they may be making, and it also allows us to correct them before it becomes a habit for that student. We can use this throughout an entire lesson, creating small checkpoints throughout the lesson, or we can do it with homework assignments or individual activities, having them do 1 or 2 problems at a time, maybe do 3 problems, get them checked, and then move on, things like that. And we should be able to do this very quickly. We should check student work quickly and move on and flow to the next student. So this doesn't take a long time to do. We need to make that process very quick. I see the value now in creating checkpoints within lessons or questions. It enables us to be consistently aware of how our students are doing, and it also gives them good feedback and lets them know how they're doing. It gives them encouragement that they're doing things the right way or they're on the right track, or it can let us redirect them and make them more confident in what they are doing before we move on. It can help avoid situations where students are working on problems incorrectly or reinforcing mistakes. We've all probably had times where we thought we were doing something really well and we practiced and later found out it's maybe not the best way to be doing that. So it takes a long time to go back and change our thinking to correct that. But if we are able to catch those mistakes early, it's going to have a better foundation for our students before they're able to move on. And like I said, we can use that to see individual mistakes, or maybe if the whole class is making similar mistakes, we can redirect or reteach before we build on that and give them new material. I plan on implementing this by creating mini lessons or checkpoints within larger ideas so that I can ensure my students understand before we move on. Also, when I'm doing this, I plan on having rubrics or answer sheets in hand so that I can quickly know exactly what I'm doing. Even if we know the material, sometimes it takes us a second to really work a problem in our heads or to come up with the best answer. Having a rubric or an answer sheet as we check these will make it a lot quicker. We're able to look and instantly say, this is right, or we need to go back and relook at what you did there. We should make checkpoints frequent. We shouldn't just do this once in a day or once in a week. We need to have several so that we're constantly building on ideas and making sure students have a solid foundation. I also plan on creating checkpoints between terms. Maybe have a definition sheet for a lesson where they're learning a lot of new terms and have them write a definition in their own words and check that definition, make sure they really understand what that means before we move on. And then when it's appropriate, allow them to do peer checking. So have rubrics or answer sheets between groups of people or between different individuals and set them in pairs and allow them to check each other's work and discuss why their work could be maybe improved or ways that they got it wrong, and allow them to help each other. So I really feel like this is a great way to ensure student understanding, make sure that students are really mastering the techniques, and it's valuable both for the teachers and the students because we're able to get confirmation how the students are doing as we go, and then the students are also able to get that confirmation and really feel confident in what they're doing. It helps eliminate errors in understanding, and it gives students solid foundation to build upon. And then it helps prevent students from practicing studying or learning things the wrong way and having to go back and try to relearn things. The last technique we want to talk about is no opt-out. This is just a technique that makes sure that you are encouraging students to always answer, to always give their best answer, not allowing students to say, I don't know, not allowing students not to participate or not to answer. So it can just help ensure that all students, especially reluctant ones, take responsibility for their learning. Don't allow I don't know to be a valid answer. If someone says I don't know, continue to talk to that student to say, well, what do you know? Break the question down into smaller pieces that maybe they're able to answer, or have another student that knows the material really well maybe give clues to help that student get to the point where they're able to answer that. And then just maintain the expectation in your classroom that it's not okay for them not to try. It's okay if we call on them and they don't really know the answer or they're struggling with the answer. We can work with that. We can get them to the point where they are able to answer and they know, but it's not okay for them not to try to get an answer right or to not participate. My thinking was impacted by this because sometimes we have the tendency to look at a student and they say, oh, I don't know, and then we just move on, or say, oh, well, does so-and-so know, and move to the next person. This kind of reminded me to keep students in check, to not allow them to slip by without putting in effort. It may take a little more time out of our day, but it's going to be really good for that student. It's going to build their confidence and their understanding, especially when they're able to get to that right answer. It really builds their confidence that they're able to do this and that they do know maybe a little more than they thought. Hold each student in the classroom to the same standard. Make sure that they all know that they could be called on, that they all know they're expected to participate. And it also made me kind of redirect to my own thinking, not to think that I'm embarrassing a student if I call them out and they don't know, and then continue to push them to answer, but it actually can be valuable for that student. It can be a good learning experience, and it can also help other students feel accomplished by being able to help them. In my classroom, I plan on implementing this by calling on students who appear to be struggling or confused to make sure that they are on the right track and they are able to get the information. Implement other students to be able to help that student that's struggling, to steer them towards the correct answer, to make sure that they're all kind of working together to get on the right track. Normalize the expectation that everyone is going to be an active participant, that they're all going to have to participate in discussions, that they're all going to be expected to be part of class. And then not let students slip by with subpar answers like I don't know, or oh, so-and-so could answer it better, to really harp on the fact that they need to be able to do their best and to at least try to give me a really good answer. So it can be very beneficial, this technique, no opt-out. It makes sure that all of your students are learning, that they're all actively involved. Like I said, it helps set the standard for involvement of all students, and it also helps set the standard for the types of answers that you expect to receive. Students will be more attentive, they'll be more prepared because they know that at any point they could be called on or asked to join a class discussion, and it gives those students a sense of pride when they are able to answer questions correctly. And it gives other students an advantage of being able to help their peers when they're struggling and create a sense of family, a sense of real community within that class, that they're able to work together. My references were Teach Like a Champion by Doug Lamoff. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed and learned something.